Hey guys, William Murphy here. Welcome back to part 2 of the Classic Mini rear subframe and suspension rebuild. In today's episode, we're going to be stripping down the rear radius arms and taking a look in more detail about how we do this. Okay, so let's give a quick breakdown of how this rear suspension setup works. You've got a pin that goes through the rear radius arm, and that rotates so the shock absorber can pivot up and down. The shock absorber itself can absorb the shock. You've also got a rubber suspension cone which will also absorb the shock and rebound that shock back down. In modern cars you've got a spring which tends to, the shock absorber absorbs the shock and the spring forces that back down. You've also got your cone. Now I'm going to be replacing this for an adjustable one so you can adjust the ride height on the car, which means when you first fit the new cones, the car's not going to sit about a mile high in the air, much like my Clubman. At the end you've also got a knuckle. Now the knuckle is just a ball joint that fits into the bottom of the radius arm, and then that can pivot as the suspension goes up and down. Things that wear out are the pivot ball. The pivot ball itself is a metal ball that doesn't tend to wear out, but it sits into a nylon cup. Now the cup itself, if you imagine this ball rubbing around in a bit of plastic or nylon, it will soon wear out and elongate the hole, and then you get a bit of play and movement in there, so that's not good. Now I'm going from memory here, and my memory doesn't serve me very well at this particular time. Now I believe on the inside you have a roller bearing, and on the outside on these you have a brass bush. The roller bearing presses out and presses in, and the brass bush presses out and presses in, but you have to then ream it to size. So what that means is you machine it to elongate that hole to fit the roller pin through. I'm not quite sure the reason why they don't just make it to the right size, but it's obviously been around since the 60s or since the late 50s. And it works well, so we continue to do that. It'd be fantastic to be able to fit roller bearings on both sides, but that's not the way it's done, and that's not the way we're going to do it today. So that's the basic suspension setup of it. Also on here you have your handbrake section, so you've got a pin that goes through the hole here, and that's basically a pivot pin. On the bottom you've got a handbrake quadrant that slides on that pin. That then adjusts the handbrake lever at the back of the shoe. You've got a flexible hose from the subframe to the radius arm, which we cut to get that off and make it a little bit easier. And then you've got a metal brake pipe that goes from the flexible hose into the back of the wheel cylinder. Turning it around then, on the back here, this plate at the back is the handbrake cable housing. So the handbrake lever that pins through here with the clevis pin, and that moves back and forward. The cable itself hooks and locates into this little bracket, and that goes across to the quadrant and then across to the middle of the subframe where it meets the other side. So as the handbrake lever is pulled, the cables are pulled out, the quadrant rotates, this pulls out, the handbrake shoes adjust out, and then the handbrake effectively becomes active. At the top here there is a square nut. Now the square nut itself is the brake shoe adjuster, so it's on a screw thread. So the further you wind it in, it's got a pin at the top like a pyramid, and the further you wind it in, the wider the shoes go, and obviously the further you wind it out, the smaller the shoes go as it hits the top of that peak. What you do is you adjust it up until the brakes bind on, and then you wind it back a couple of clicks, and that is then the correct adjustment. What you'll also find here is, with it being a square, on the actual pin, the pin's squared as well. So as you're adjusting it, you'll find it goes tight and then it goes quite loose. Now that's where you're going to the peak of that square, and then when it goes loose, you're on a flat. You need to adjust this to a loose section, because if you don't and you adjust it to the pin, if you put your foot on the brake and that then turns and moves, your brake pedal will go probably quite far to the floor. Your brakes will become ineffective and it's not going to be good. So today we're going to strip this all down. I'm going to try and get the brake pipes off, the suspension shock off, the nylon cup out, the pin out, the flexible brake hose off, and the drum off, and I'm hopefully going to try and get the back plate off as well. I'm going to get it all cleaned up, and then once it's ready, it's going to get rebuilt. It's going to be freshly painted, so when it goes back onto the car, it's all going to look nice, new and fresh, just like the bodywork and the paint is going to be as well. The car that this has been on the channel a few times previously, and hopefully once it's all back on the road, we're going to do a full review on the car because I absolutely love this car. It's beautiful. It's been so tastefully modified, and just, yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful car. So let's talk him and let's get on with this strip down. So the first issue I've come across, which is pretty early on, I found this when I was trying to strip it down. The nut has kind of seized on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it on there for now, and then I'm going to come back in tomorrow when it's daytime and not going to upset the neighbours, and I'm going to cut this off. So the bush is out, or the pin's out. It's quite dry along the end, so it means it hasn't been as lubricated as it could have been, which isn't great. So I'm going to get this bracket off of the pin. You can buy adjustable brackets for this, which I have on my Clubman, where you can adjust the height up and down, and you can also adjust it in and out to adjust the camber on the wheel, or the alignment on the wheel, should I say. So that's the pin out. You see it's got quite a lot of dirt and grime that just sort of disintegrates into your hand. But I think this will clean up pretty well. Right, next up then, flip it back round. Let's de-adjust the brake shoes. So you have a special spanner for this, which is a square-ended spanner. And that just goes in. Let's try and get it moving to start with. Okay, so then we can inspect the inside of the drum, making sure there's no scores or marks, which this one here actually has quite a few bits of like corrosion and stuff on the edge, and there's marks in there as if something's been leaking at some point. And the brake shoes themselves look to be pretty wet, so I think we'll give it an overhaul, we'll check it all up, we'll clean it all down and see exactly what's happening. So what can happen is the wheel cylinders can leak, causing contaminants to leak, or brake fluid to leak onto the brake shoes, and actually contaminate and affect the braking capacity of these shoes. So you just pinch the boot and pull it back, and you want to make sure that there's no fluid inside there, which this one here has got quite a lot of rusted old fluid, which is not great. And the other side, it looks pretty poor condition. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to change these to make sure that it's nice and safe when the car goes back on the road. You can do this all with the hub still on, but because I'm stripping it all down, I'm going to take the hub off. So the passenger side has an opposite thread, so effectively you're doing it up, take it off. Now the purpose of that is that as the car is travelling in the one direction, it's not obviously becoming loose. something has been rubbing, as you can see here, on that hub. I'm going to put this all to one side for now. And it's all going to get cleaned up and potentially fit new wheel bearings to that as well. Right, now we have, apart from the two bearings at the end, a stripped down rear radius arm. Now I'll just try to wire brush it up a little bit, and you can see from the top here, this actually cleaned up quite well. I think what I'll do is I'll try and get the worst off with a wire wheel on a grinder, and because that seemed to be really good, successful doing other bits and pieces, and then see how we get on with cloud cleaner can get it. It may be a case of then taking it down and getting it shot blasted if I can't get it completely clean, and then see about the price of powder coating. Failing that, a lick of Hammerite will go a long way. So you can see here that it's not a circle, it's actually got flat edges. So as it adjusts, it will roll over and it will hit the flat section, go dunk, 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 and actually that's how the adjustment sits. It's got a flat side 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now I've cleaned it up, hopefully you're able to see a bit better again. So you can see the flat edge, and then it rotates round on the edge, and I've got a flat edge, and that's how it adjusts. As it winds in, it goes into the flat edge and locks into place. The next up, I'm going to turn my attention to the back plate. There's a little bit of repair I've got to do because it's been sort of dented in. I'm going to straighten that all out. I'm going to get it all cleaned up. Hopefully I can clean this up by hand or by wire brush. Failing that, there are other alternatives to get it powder coated, or so shot blasted, soda blasted, vapor blasted. There's lots of options we can go by, and yeah, let's see how we get on with these first. So I've cleaned it up as best as I can with the wire brush, and it's actually come up quite well. It's got a bit of corrosion in between the outer edge and the inside. I have managed to straighten the inside out using my brake pipe spanner and just place it in and then just edging it out until I can get the circle again. If I went too far, I use a little hammer and just gently tapped it back into shape. So I'm pretty happy with the shape of this now. It's all nice and circle. I just need to try and get the stuff out. So if I just go around the edge, you can see there is a layer of like corrosion there still. So what I don't want to happen is I don't want to blast it and it'd be too powerful and actually damage the back plate, because they're quite expensive to get hold of really for what they are.
But it'd be fantastic to get that all painted up nicely, even if I just do it myself by hand with a Hammerite, but just to get it cleaned and rust free. So I'm going to leave this video here. I will be back tomorrow to clean up that radius arm and hopefully get it ready for paint by pushing out the bearings, etc. But yeah, I'm going to leave this video here because it's going to be quite long otherwise. So that is the one side stripped down completely. What I'm going to do is, at a later date, I'm going to film the other side, and I'm going to put it through as a time lapse just to show that I've done both sides. Any questions, as always, please comment down below. If you have enjoyed the content, please click that thumbs up button, and if you can, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future content. That's me. I'm going inside. I'm very cold, although these winter overalls are amazing. So have a nice day, have a nice evening, and I'll catch you guys next time. Take it easy.